Hi, my name is Antonis and I'm the iconographer in this video. Today you will see me painting the holy face of Saint John the Baptist, and I want to share with you the process of painting the light on his face, the areas that receive light. So if you are interested in this is a complicated enough process. If you are interested in seeing this, please follow me on this video. I will try to explain as thoroughly as possible the process. So as you see here, I have already painted my proplasmos on the face of Saint John, and then I've painted the shadows, the so-called γραψίματα, on the face of Saint John, the facial features, the eyes, and notice how they are not very dark as a tone, the shadows on the proplasmos, they are very discreet, and this is very, very important. Anyway, at this point I am ready to proceed with painting the lights, and I almost always start by painting the shape of the light on the nose. For these lights I have created a color that consists of titanium white, a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of cadmium yellow, and a little bit of iron oxide red. Now, I don't want this color to be, as a tone, to be too much brighter than my proplasmos. I don't want this to be extremely strong as a tone in contrast to the proplasmos. I want it to be dark enough, so I can sometimes add a little bit of black on this first color. This way, not only I bring the tone down, I make it darker, but also I make it lose its saturation. Now, one thing that I need to address here is that often students in iconography and professionals as well do the mistake to use oversaturated colors, and the final result is not always very spiritual, let's say. We don't really have to use very saturated, very strong colors. I often hear people saying that we shouldn't use in painting, in iconography, we shouldn't use black as a way to darken our colors. This is one way to proceed. Like if you want to darken a color, you can add its a complementary color. If you want to darken, let's say, a green dress, for example, you can add some red, which is its complementary color, to darken it. This way it will darken as a tone, but it will not lose much of its saturation. That's okay. On the other side, we can use black to darken our tones, and this is this gives us a really interesting effects, as it makes the color lose its saturation, its intensity, let's say, and we have a more subtle, a more discrete, let's say, result on our icon. So here I want this color to be not as bright in contrast to the proplasmos, and I want it to be slightly more bright, a little bit warmer, and you can already see the consistency of this color, which is a pretty thin consistency. It's not, it's a little bit watery, let's say. It's pretty thin, so it creates this sense of transparency. I don't want to make it very, very transparent. I want the consistency of this color to be such that will allow me to create these shapes of light on the proplasmos. But at the same time, I want the consistency to be such that will have me leave a mark on the proplasmos, and at the same time have some transparency. So here I am painting these shapes on the saint's cheek, on above the upper lip, the lower lip a little bit. And I want to make sure that the brush that I'm using, which is a natural bristle Kolinsky brush, does the job. It has a pointy tip. It has some spring on it, and a tip for you is about the brush is to always, as you paint, you have to keep asking yourselves if the brush does the job you want it to do, if it obeys, if it's a good tool, let's say, and if it doesn't do the job, ask yourselves what kind of brush would do this the job that you want to do. So many students ask me about the color, the recipe of a specific color, what specific colors should we use for the proplasmos, for the first light, etc. I really, as I often say, don't have a very specific recipe. As I say, for this light, I'm using a little bit of titanium white, a little bit of black, a little bit of yellow. In most cases, it's cadmium yellow, and a little bit of yellow ochre, and a little bit of iron oxide red. So when you prepare colors, you have to think of three specific things. The first is what kind of color you want to make, how you want it to be yellowish, you want it to be bluish. You have to aim to have a goal for a specific color. Then you also have to aim for a specific tone, how dark or how bright this color is. You have to aim for that. And third thing, as you are creating this color on your palette, you have to aim for its right consistency, how transparent, how watery, how much egg tempera solution you add. So these three things are very, very important when you create a color on your palette. See here that I have painted the basic shapes on the face of Saint John, and by using this consistency, this runny, thin consistency of the color, I have already a pretty good sense of the transitions, and even without using further in-between colors, as you will see in a little bit, to soften these shapes of light, even just by using transparency, this transparent color, I already have some sense of first transition, and which makes things very, very interesting and nice. So as you see here, I am doing some blending just by using a very, very transparent color of the same first color that I have created. So on my palette, just to make things clear, I create the color of the first light, and the consistency of that color is a medium consistency. It's not very thin, it's not very thick. At the same time, I take some of that color and I add a lot of egg tempera solution to make it more thin, more runny, more watery, let's say. And with this color, I will paint the areas of these shapes that need to be transitioned, that need to be blended. So I try by the end of this step of painting this first light to have a sense of the transitions that will happen later on. Now, as I proceed, I will create a color on my palette, which is the color of proplasmos. If I have it from when I painted the proplasmos, I will use that, or I will create again this color on my palette, and then I will start doing I will mix this color of proplasmos with some of the color of my first light, and I will create first in-between color. With this in-between color, I will do these transitions even smoother. I will go around the shapes which don't have an abrupt end, and I will try to make this transition. So on my palette, I will create a color of proplasmos, which is black with some cadmium yellow, a little bit of ochre, and some iron oxide red. These are usually the colors that I'm using. I will check the consistency of this color and see that it's a not very thick, not very thin consistency. And then with this color, I will take some of this proplasmos color. I will take some of my first light color, use this in between, and I will try to blend between those two in the areas where I see that I need a transition that is smooth. Now, it's important to understand that I work on the edge of the first light towards the proplasmos, and I really don't care if things get messy. I don't really much care at this point how things look, especially towards the center of the shapes of the light. I'm mostly interested on what's happening on the edges of the shapes and if there is this smooth transition. As you see, the icon already, even if it looks messy at this point, it has some interest, and it reminds us these old icons which are very, very spiritual, and even with so few brush strokes, even with so few embellishments, let's say, they work nice and they are beautiful. So after I'm doing this the first in-between color, I want to create a second in-between color that is more towards this even darker, and I want to do some blending towards towards the area of the proplasmos. So in general, I want you to know that for my process, I'm using 2 or 3 in-between colors. One that is a color that is in between the first light and the proplasmos, and an in-between color that is between the first in-between color and the proplasmos. So the transition will be even more smooth. After that, and as you see here at this point, I'm creating a third in-between color that is between my first in-between color and the first light. I know this can be very confusing as I say this, but in iconography you have to understand that this process is very, very important and one of the most complicated and difficult process to achieve, and you have to use your eyes and you have to understand what tones mean, and you have to understand how to blend tones in egg tempera, how to use the tip of the brush, how to use the transparency of the colors to create in between colors and make your blendings. I know that this can be a little bit confusing, but you can check my other videos on YouTube where I have some exercises on how to blend colors in egg tempera, and this will be very, very helpful. So yeah. Now, I want you to understand that painting an icon, unlike what many schools of iconography teach, is a painting process, is a painting act. It's not just following steps, step one, step two, step three, but more you have to approach it with a sense of painting. So you have to use your eyes and you have to really ask questions as you're painting, like should I blend here? Does this shape has an abrupt end? Does this shape has a smooth transition? Can I go? Should I go back a step and use another in between color to make the transitions more smooth? Asking questions like that will help you immensely improve your iconography skills. And again, you have, if you understand that this is not just a process of following steps, but it's a painting action. This will really help you approach and create icons that are much more spiritual, much more beautiful, much more powerful. I know that this approach of iconography as a painting process is it's a more difficult approach. We don't have the security of a recipe. We don't have the security of step one, step two, step three, but instead we are using these steps, of course, but the way we paint is relies more on us understanding what we paint and us using our eyes to do corrections to make it to make an icon work. For this, of course, it's very important that we know what a good icon looks like, and we have studied iconography not only in the studio but also in the museums, in the churches where we see icons. We really have to study and know what a good icon looks like. So if you are interested in iconography and you are a student in iconography, you definitely have to visit a museum or a church that has beautiful icons. It's very important to enrich your mental library, let's say, with images of icons that are very good. So because we have to remember what the purpose of an icon is. The purpose of an icon is to help the viewer pray, to uplift the mind of the viewer in the spiritual world. An icon is a gate through it we pray to the person that is depicted. So it's not just enough to complete an icon. Okay, each icon has its own charm, that's correct, but think if you visit a church that is very old with arches and stone built and beautiful windows, as you enter this beautiful old church, you directly feel a very different sense of spirituality than in comparison to entering a church that is modern. You know, in the latest years we have some issues with architecture with Christian architecture. So you can definitely agree with me that when we enter these older churches, we feel something directly that is much more spiritual. The same thing goes with the icons. Yes, every icon, even if it's on a paper that writes the name of the saint, it's an icon, okay, but not all icons are the same. So we aim for an icon that is not just um, beautiful for the eyes. It doesn't just please the eyes, but also it is painted in a way that can welcome the viewer to the spiritual world. So so as you see, I aim for icons to not be, the perfect transitions, or having the perfect transitions, or having the perfect gold around it, or the perfect letters. We are not robots, and it's perfectly fine if our lines are a little bit shaky, or our psimitheas, the highlights, are not perfect. That's fine, but we aim for a work that can be uplifting for anyone who sees the icon. Anyway, I talked maybe a lot on this subject. Now I am, as you see, I'm doing this in between. Still, I'm in this in between colors, and you see how I try to make these lights work, and seem that they they have a reason on the face of Saint John. I'm using transparencies, and I'm using all my in-between colors, using my eyes to see how and where I will place these in-between colors. And little by little, by the end of this process of painting the first light, I already have a sense of these shapes. Please notice how beautifully the transparency of the proplasmos, the base color of proplasmos, as you see, it's there is some transparency on it. Remember, when we paint flat colors, when we paint the colors of the base colors that will receive shadows and lights, we don't paint a wall. It has to have some transparency, because this is a painting act, as we say, and we notice in all those old icons how their base colors had this some sort of transparency. The iconographers were painters. So to me, often when I hear the verb to write an icon, it strikes to me as it's on the wrong direction. It's a painting act. Iconography is a painting act, and this is how we should approach it if we are to go deep in this sacred art. So as I say here, I'm using my eyes. I try to notice which areas need a little bit softening, let's say, and I, I'm having all my in-between colors on my palette, and I go back and forth and doing these transitions. Now I'm working, my palette is a piece of glass like 35 by 50 centimeters, or as big as you like. It's a piece of flat glass, whereupon I mix my colors. This is very, very useful. I don't use anything else like these ceramic palettes with little hollows in them. I just use a flat glass, and it's easy for me to make these the mixtures of the colors on that palette, and also to quickly access any kind of color, of in between color on that glass. So feel free um, to try this as palette, and you will see how how quickly this becomes very, very easy after I've busy. And after I've painted, I will scrap the colors with a knife, and I will clean the glass again. So many students, I've noticed that as they paint, they lose their concentration, and the mind drifts here and there. But we have to try and bring the mind on the process. We have to be concentrated in the process as we paint. It's not much fun, let's say, but we have to be concentrated. And I say this because often the students will create colors on their palette, and then they will forget the purpose of each color. They will be confused after creating so many colors, and they will not know which color is what. So this is a matter of us being concentrated in the process and really know what we do each time. We never have to paint something without a purpose, without knowing what we do. At the same time, often it feels, especially for students, that we don't know what we really do. That as well is okay. It's part of the process, especially the learning process of iconography, to not know sometimes what we are doing, and it's okay. It's okay. To me, it's important that we practice, we stay in the studio, and we gain experience from using our materials, our pigments, and everything. One of my best advices is to really spend time looking on old icons, especially if you can observe them, look them in person, as I say, in churches and in museums. It's very, very important. But even if you can't, find online some images of great older icons and just spend time looking at them and try to guess how these masters painted their icons. Now here on the video you see that I'm using again my first color, the color of the first light, and I want to reinforce, let's say, these shapes on the face of Saint John. In the process of blending, in the process of doing the transitions between the first light and the proplasmos, these shapes tend to lose their original shape. So here I want to redefine them. And as I'm doing this, I also have in my mind the final position of the psimithies, of the highlights. So as I'm doing this, I am painting also a little bit of these psimithies, just to prepare, let's say, their positioning later on. By doing this, when I follow later on with actually painting these psimithies, these highlights, they will feel that they sit upon a prepared area. They will make more sense. So what I'm doing here has two purposes. First, to reinstate the color of the first light a little bit more, and to make the first light a little bit more firm on the face of Saint John, and at the same time to to prepare for the highlights that will follow by painting some of this first light color in the shape of psimithias. It doesn't it doesn't need them to be very evident at this point. Many times we paint in iconography an advanced student in iconography, we often paint in colors that are so thin, so transparent, that we don't actually see the result directly. It's a very discrete result that even the painter doesn't see it directly. Of course, you see me here, you see me painting this, but I have looked on icons of Saint John, so I have some reference of what I'm doing. So it's of course, when you are painting, you have your reference, and as I say always, it's good that this reference is an old icon. It's not an icon painted in the last 200 years, but go previously that, and really observe your reference and see what you can how you can paint as close to that reference as possible. I'm really sorry for my English is not very good, but I try my best, and as I always say, the video may speak better than me. I want you to notice how much time I spend on this process of the first light, of establishing the first light before proceeding with the second and the highlights. It's really a process that requires some time, and as I say, if to you comes very easy, like without any going back and forth, without any corrections, then you probably should re-examine the process. It's not an easy one, and the more time we spend on a process, sometimes the more visually rich it can be. And of course, if you do a great job on this stage, then everything that follows is much more easy, because now what I'm doing is preparing the, the these shapes to accept the highlights in a way that makes sense, and most of the hard job, which is the transitions, let's say, it's done. Notice how I'm using the tip of my brush, and I wipe the excess color if there is some excess color. And I have to tell you that as I'm doing this, I have to often wake myself up from, from my mind drifting away, from me not being able to step back a little bit and see what I'm painting. It's important to often stop and lean back and see if what we paint makes sense and what we need to correct, what we need to revisit. So now I am ready to proceed with painting my second light, and I always start by painting this second light from the nose. So here I'm using a color. I want to have a color on my palette that is slightly lighter in tone, as a tone to be a little bit more light, and as a color to be a little bit more pinkish, a little bit more warm. You can't really see here because what we see is the difference is in tone, but it's not only lighter in tone, but also a little bit more pink. So for this color, I add I take some of my first light color and I will add a little bit of titanium white to lighter the tone, and I will add a little bit of cadmium red to make it a little bit more warm, more pink. And with this color, I will I will start by directly painting the ψιμιθιές, the highlights. Now, in iconography, we have many ways through the centuries. It's a very long tradition. The Byzantine painting has a very long tradition. So, throughout the centuries of its existence, we have many different types of painting a face. We have the Paleologian school, the Cretan school, the painting of the Comnenian period, and many others. So, um, uh, in this case, I'm using something that takes a lot from the Cretan school, but also has the approach of the Paleologian school in terms of its approach. So what I'm doing here is I'm painting this second light in the forms of ψιμιθιές. And of course, the brush has to cooperate, it has to do the job. This process is very, very important, and when you paint ψιμιθιές, you really have to understand the form and the dynamic of each one of these lines. They start thin, they become thicker towards their middle, and then they become thin again. This is very, very important, and you have to be able to master the positioning and the painting of these ψιμιθιές. The brush has to barely touch the surface at the beginning, and then leave in the middle, leave a little bit more of color, and then thin this line towards the end. Here you can see it, how I'm trying to do this. Let me just tell you that in order for me to being able to paint these ψιμιθιές, it took me so many years, and many years of research, many years of because I didn't have a proper teaching, or my teachers didn't always understand the process of ψιμιθιές, so I had to somehow reinvent or rediscover this process. And as I say, it's very, very difficult, because we have to place these ψιμιθιές in such a way that they will make sense. It can be it's a very difficult process. Many students just place these ψιμιθιές very close to each other, or very far apart to each other, or they extend them towards areas that doesn't make any sense, or they seem very abrupt toward sitting very abruptly on the first light. These are the common mistakes that students do, and this is something that takes practice and effort. Having a good teacher guide you and critique you is important. The thing is that you have to find the correct teacher for this. So a big part of learning iconography and is not only having a teacher that will teach you the the materials we use and the techniques, but also to being able to correct your work and guide you gently and with a sense of respect towards the learning process, to guide you through the depth of iconography, and part of this is to correct your work and try to make you see and understand how you will achieve a depth and better results, let's say, in iconography. But in order to do this, you have to find teachers that understand iconography in depth, that they understand that there is always space for improvement, even for a teacher, and that this is an art, a sacred art that really has no end in its learning process. So now you see me painting an in-between color between the first light and the second highlight. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating on my glass palette a very transparent color of this second light. I take some of this second light, I will add a lot of egg solution to make it very transparent. And if I want, I can add just a little bit of the first light, just a little bit, to make sure that the tone of this in-between color is a little darker than the second light. And with this very transparent color, I will go above the first light and a little bit towards I will go above the second light and a little bit above the first light, and I will soften these lines that these psimitheas that I previously painted. I will not cover the whole first light with this in-between color, and I want to make sure that the consistency, the transparency of this color is correct. I would create, it's better to create a color that is more transparent than more opaque at this point. And of course, one thing you have to always understand is the quantity of pigment that a brush holds. It's not only the consistency that has to be right, but also how much color the hairs of the brush hold, and according to how much pigment they hold, the brush stroke will differ. So you have to make sure that sometimes we need it to be more loaded, sometimes we need it to be more dry. Here, in this case of the in-between color, I want to use a color that is a little bit more I don't want I want to control the brush, so yeah. So after I have painted this in-between color, I will reinstate these highlights a little bit with my first color. I will make them, but see how these highlights, as I'm painting the lower lip, see how these highlights seem that they differ, of course, in tone. They are more bright, more light than the first light that I used, but also see how they are incorporated, let's say. They are part of the flesh area of the saint, if you understand what I mean. They don't seem that they fly over the top, but they seem integrated. So now I'm doing a little bit of painting on the eyelids of Saint John. I'm using I believe this is not a second light, but it's first light with a little bit of red in that. Again, here I'm using my eyes to do some corrections. When I say I'm using my eyes, is that I try to observe the icon and ask myself questions like where I need to blend more, where I need to soften more, where I need to, to extend the shape, this and that, all these things. And since I understand the color, I will I can create, even if my colors are dry, I can recreate them. Here I'm using a very bright color. This is some mixture of cadmium red with a little bit of iron oxide red to paint the upper lip. In the past, I was a little bit reluctant to use bright colors for the mouth, but they work very nice, especially if the proplasmos is darker. We can have beautiful results by using bright reds on the mouth with some, we have to observe and see if it works. Now here I'm using again a very transparent cadmium red and a little bit of cadmium yellow mixture that as you see it's very transparent, and with this I will go over the shapes that I have painted in some areas, like on the lower part of the nose, the lower part of the cheeks, and I will warm up a little bit this some areas. This will give some life to the face. It will make it visually more interesting and more rich. And now I'm ready with painting my third light. It's the highlight. So here I'm using a color that is almost titanium white. It's a little bit broken with some of my second light, just a little bit. And now I'm doing these psimithias. Here you have to be really discreet. This highlight doesn't have to go everywhere. See, I'm painting just 2.5, let's say, highlights under the eye, and that's that. We don't have to overdo this. And see how directly this highlight gives us a sense of volume, a sense of the feeling of how an icon should look. Now, the brush, as you understand here, has to be very important. I use a round, short Kolinsky brush, and it's not very. I've seen students using a very small brush, very tiny brush. These don't work. The brush has to have some body. It has to have something. But I'm using the tip of my brush, and in order for the brush to work and let the color slide through its hairs, the consistency has to be right. If I use a very thick color at this point, the brush wouldn't be able to let it go, and it would create me problems. It wouldn't give me a thin beginning of the line as I want. So I want to make sure that the consistency is correct. Here I want the color, the pigment, to have some thickness. I don't want it to be very thin, but at the same time I don't want this to be as thick as thick that the brush will not be able to handle this consistency. So you have to really find the right one. I know I sometimes feel guilty that we go so deep in iconography that I might destroy the beauty, not the beauty, I might destroy the joy maybe of the students. But this joy will come when you paint icons that are so that seem that you understand iconography in depth. Joy will come. It's important to discipline ourselves and to, as I say, to not drift away as we paint, but to be really concentrated. And you see here how, by having done all this preparation with very few brush strokes, we have this nice result already. I really hope that this lesson is helpful and what I'm saying makes sense to you. You can find lessons on my Patreon page, and you can always check my course on Teachable, where I teach iconography from the beginning on how to draw your icon and all the steps towards a finished icon. I want to thank you so much for your comments, your support here and on Patreon. Really, this is a big support for me, and I want to thank you all so much for your presence here. If you are still at this point watching the video, it's it means to me that you are committed as iconographers or students of iconography. And let me tell you that I myself feel as a student, even if I paint since 1992, I've started learning iconography, but still I feel there is so much more to learn and so much more to improve and become better. So here you see that I'm doing one more in between layer. I want to soften these highlights a little bit more. I will create on my palette a color that is more transparent, and I will go over these areas of the highlights and make them a little bit more soft. The color is transparent enough, and it's not the color of the third light, but it's a tone or two darker than that. I step back a little bit and I see if this works, if this needs some further blending, if I need to go back on the first light and do some reshaping of the lights. This way of lighting a face with these highlights, with these psimithias, can be very charming. It can give us a sense of the essence of the Byzantine painting. The Cretan school used these in a calligraphy way, and they can be very beautiful, but they require a lot of experience. They require some practice. So feel free to, to try this, and even if the result is not as great, really don't worry. Aim for hard work in iconography, aim for improvement each time, and very soon you will not believe that what you see in front of your easel came from your was painted by your hands. Be humble in the process and trust that with practice we will improve, and always be grateful about your gift in painting. Your approach this in a humble way, and very, very soon you will be amazed by the results. Being humble is important in not only in iconography, in paint. I would say in all kinds in every art and in life, of course, because imagine if we had a sense of accomplishment early on, how this would create obstacles for our improvement. Of course, we have to take pleasure from anything we paint, and it's really nice. But when I say being humble, know that no matter how satisfied we are from our work, know that there's always more to learn. And as a good friend of mine, an amazing iconographer here in Crete, um, tells me in our discussions, iconographers are of um, slow maturity. We mature late in life, and most of the best icons painted by the great iconographers were painted as they became more mature and older in life. If you make a mistake, you can wait a little bit for things to settle and to dry a little bit, and you can go back, revisit. And at this point, really, if you make a mistake and you want to revisit, and you think that it's all everything destroyed, and if it really something is destroyed and cannot be fixed, remember that even that is gain. You gain experience, you gain you get to know your materials better, and really don't be disappointed if things don't work always in our favor. This happens to me often, that things don't work. So uh, remember that the more we struggle on the icon, and especially when painting faces, this is very, very it's a complicated process. It's a difficult process. So the more we struggle with this, even if things do not work, the more the more we gain experience, and it's good. So here you see that I'm going a little bit back and forth. At this point, I'm using very transparent colors, and my preoccupation is to make the highlights, the psimitheas, to feel integrated with the first light, to feel that there is a natural, let's say, continuation from the first light towards the psimitheas, that they are not very abrupt, or that they are not fly over the first light, but they have a point in existing. So even if this way of lightening a face seems so unnatural and not naturalistic, and something that the Western painters would never dream of using as a way to to show volume and light on the face. See, though, here in the Byzantine painting, how nicely they look, how um, how although they are unnatural in their way of lightening a face, see how spiritual they look and how beautiful. At this point, I'm almost done with painting the face. To me, it looks already that this can work. But there is always room for more and some corrections here and there. So, of course, your reference will guide you how to lighten and what shapes to paint. You have to really observe your reference, but at the same time, you really have to observe your painting and um, to make it work, to make it be something that makes sense and it's beautiful. So by doing this video, I want, to share with you what's going on in my mind as I'm painting this. Um, you can see this demo of how I painted the light on the face of Saint John, but it's more important to understand how to think and how to approach this kind of painting. So now I'm using pure titanium white color to just accentuate these highlights. This, of course, as you see here, it's very, very discreet. I will just use one line of titanium white just to make it a little bit, as you see here, just to make it. Yeah, that's that. Try to be very, very discreet at this point. And after that, I am proceeding with painting the lights on the white part of the eyes. Here I'm doing a first layer of a color that is more gold, more gray bluish, let's say, and it's a tone darker than the proplasmos, as you see. And this goes around the iris of the eye, and then I'm doing a second light that is of course as a tone much lighter than the previous one, and directly you see how the face of Saint John gets life, and we can see the gaze of Saint John. Of course, the area of the eyes and the expression is so important. Now, here, let me just tell you a very common mistake that many students do is they place this highlight right next to the iris. They place this very high up, touching the upper eyelid, and this is a very common mistake. Here we have to keep the highlight in a very small, to keep it contained, let's say. The smaller it is, the better, I can say. Doing some corrections here and there. So thank you again so much for being here, and I hope you learned something out of this lesson of on the face of Saint John. If you want more and in other subjects like the shadows, the grapsimata, you can visit my Patreon page, or you can check, as I said, my Teachable course, my course on Teachable. It's a very detailed course with more than 25 videos. They are explaining the process of painting.
Hi, I'm Antonis, and I'm proud to present you my online course on iconography, Paint an Icon with me. This course will help you become a better iconographer, and it will help you be more confident when talking and presenting your artwork. It will make you understand in depth the studio practices of a professional iconographer like me, and you will get accustomed to what great iconography looks like. So learn in a simple and organized way everything you need about the materials, mediums, and techniques in order to make a beautiful icon. Paint with me the icon of Christ and learn how to paint better any icon you wish. I will see you at the studio.
To me, it's important that you understand how this is a painting process, and not just following recipes. And I'm very sure that with much practice you really will achieve very, very, very beautiful results. So again, thank you so much for being here. Um, be um, be creative, try to be healthy, and to be more in your studio. I will see you soon in another video. Bye.